Exclusive.
A San Antonio pimp was found guilty of taking out one of his former prostitutes and burning her body. Glenn Dukes was assessed a life sentence without parole for tying Jacqueline Johnson to a chair and suffocating her on June 2nd, 2012, then setting her body on fire. Johnson's oldest sister, who raised her with the rest of her own children, held up photographs of her sister as she told Dukes that she hated him and she hoped that he burned in hell through tears and sobs. She went on to say, "I hope they do to you in prison what you did to her every day." Ginger Ferguson also said that, "You're a piece of shit, and you can't even look at me. Look at me." Dukes was already serving 2 life sentences for a trafficking conviction. The state did not seek the death penalty in that case. Several distractions occurred during the trial, which began in September. Dukes, in the first days of his trial, screamed at his lawyer, tried to get a new jury seated, and sought to have State District Judge Ron Rangel recuse himself. Objections from defense attorney Cornelius Cox prompted the removal of the jury at least 4 times, interrupting testimony and causing attorneys from both sides of the aisle to approach the bench. At another point, while a crime scene investigator was testifying, 3 of Dukes' adult children walked into the courtroom wearing red t-shirts with pictures of their father below. The captions on the shirts read, "Free my pops" or "Free my daddy" in front, and "Show me the evidence" on the back. Rangel briefly removed the jury from the courtroom when the prosecution objected to the shirts. Prosecutor David Lunan told the judge that the shirts are nicely done, but it's improper to display those in the courtroom, the prosecutor explained to the judge as the jury left the courtroom. When the jury returned, investigators continued their testimony about executing warrants at Dukes' home in the 600 block of Martin Luther King Drive on the east side, and the condition of Johnson's body, which was found by firefighters still burning in the 100 block of Schrader Road, about 4 miles from Dukes' home. The 3 left the courtroom when they were given the option of changing clothes or turning the shirts inside out. They declined. "No, I paid too much money for this," one woman was heard saying as she left the courtroom.
It wasn't normal for her to not call anybody. He said that Jackie had called him a few days before, a couple days before actually, and she was looking for a place to stay.
So this mechanism of using the blanket
And the pillow
to hold you and suffocate you and deny you air was something he did more than once,
Oh yes,
more than twice,
yes,
many times.
yes.
Angry and innocent. That is how convicted killer Glenn Dukes is describing himself.
They playing a game called Pass the Witness real quick, and I don't get an opportunity to get my question in.
Sir, would you like to represent yourself?
See, there y'all go with that, man.
Dukes is accused of killing 24-year-old Jacqueline Johnson. Her body was found near this east side intersection. She'd been kidnapped, suffocated with a plastic bag over her head, and burned.
I didn't kill Jackie, sir. I'm not a killer and I'm not a pimp. But she was a friend of mine. She stayed with me maybe about a year. They really lower their standards in the courtroom just to get a conviction. That they'll violate your rights.
Though insisting he was not a pimp, Dukes has the word pimp tattooed on his face.
It says that's because I was pretty much forced to accept that name because of my choice of my style of living is low class. And everybody's life can't be peaches and cream. Somebody got to do some suffering. I guess I'm that one.
Prosecutors say Dukes lured women into homes and forced them into prostitution between 2011 and 2013. Now, according to one victim, Dukes supplied the women with drugs and kept the money from clients. Victims who testified today are blurred in the video because they have all been allegedly assaulted or raped by Dukes. One woman described just how abusive he could be towards her.
The jury was seated, then excused, as Glenn Dukes shouted his objection to his attorney entering a plea on his behalf. He tried to fire his attorney. Motion denied. He asked that presiding judge Ron Runhell be recused, then left the courtroom. That request was forwarded to administrative judge David Peoples.
Judge Peoples has instructed the court that he is denying this motion. Written orders will be sent later on in the week. Let's go ahead and bring the defendant in.
Dukes returned briefly, only to hear his lawyer asked to withdraw from the case. That request denied. Dukes left the courtroom again and opening arguments began. Prosecutors told how 24-year-old Jacqueline Johnson was suffocated with a plastic bag in June of 2012, then set on fire. He said she had been in and out of prostitution. Dukes, according to his earlier trial, was a pimp in what was described as a dark underworld.
And when I'm talking about this underworld and this darkness, I'm not talking about an abstract thing. I'm talking about Glenn Dukes, because he was the one that brought all this. And ultimately, he's the one that murdered her.
Though Dukes is on trial for capital murder, the state is not seeking the death penalty.